Hi everyone, I'm Alex Dykes, and this is not the 2014 RAM ProMaster by Chrysler and Fiat. This is actually a 2013 Fiat Ducato. So if this isn't a RAM ProMaster, and the Fiat Ducato like this is not sold in America, then why are we looking at one? Well, the answer is simple, because this gives us the best idea of what that ProMaster will be like when it finally lands in America in just a few short months. Chrysler tells us that production will start right around July 1st, 2013, and we should expect to see them in dealerships within a relatively short period of time after that. The ProMaster is more than just an Americanized Ducato. I mean, yes, that is what it is, but in order to Americanize it, Fiat didn't just realign crash structures and add some cup holders inside. Instead, they went back to the drawing board and they decided, what could we do to this existing vehicle to make it more desirable to Americans? And the big thing they did was increase its cargo capacity. We're up front for one very important reason. The Fiat Ducato, and therefore the RAM ProMaster, is a full-size, unibody, front-wheel drive van. You did hear that right, it's a front-wheel drive, full-size cargo van, with a very large payload capacity, I might add, but we'll go over that later. That may sound like the Ford Transit van. I'm not talking about the Transit Connect, the little baby one. I'm talking about the big old, full-size Ford Transit van that's sold in Europe. By the time Ford converts that into an American van, the T-Series, that we expect to see in 2014 sometime, they will have converted it from a front-wheel drive vehicle like this Ducato to a rear-wheel drive vehicle for American tastes. So it's a very different flavor. We aren't really going to dive under the hood because there's not a whole lot to see under there. Suffice it to say there is a 3-liter, 4-cylinder diesel engine under there with a robotic manual transmission. That's not an automatic transmission with a manual mode. This is a manual transmission with an automatic mode. Very different concept going on there. Used quite heavily in Europe. We're told that the ProMaster for America will also have a 3.6-liter V6 engine and a regular automatic transmission, but we'll know more about that when we get our hands on one. The Ducato may have kind of a funny nose, but there's a reason for this black plastic madness, and that's it wraps all the way around, so that way if you hit something in your van, it's a lot cheaper to replace, a lot easier to replace. It's also less noticeable if you just don't want to replace it. And the second thing is that they house a lot of the crash structure areas in this front section of the nose, so that way they're more easily replaceable in an accident. Saves an awful lot of time and an awful lot of money, and we all know that commercial drivers are not terribly careful. Why would you want a front-wheel drive cargo van? There's a very good reason for that, and it's right inside this door. This load floor is 7 inches lower to the ground than in the nearest American competitor, and the Ford Transit full-size van or T-Series in America isn't going to change that very much because it's rear-wheel drive. So under this van you won't find a drive shaft, doesn't need one. Instead, we get all that extra room for cargo carrying. And if I step inside here, we're in the high roof version. There's a factory high roof and a factory low roof available. This inside ceiling is 6 feet 4 inches from the load floor. Ford is expected to offer a high roof version of the T-Series van from the factory next year, and Nissan already offers a high roof factory version of the NV 2500 and 3500 series cargo vans. But there's an important consideration. You figure if those start off the ground 7 inches more than this, and the inside is the same height, then they're going to be a great deal taller. That was really borne out the last time we had the high roof version of the Nissan NV cargo van, because the person that had it before us smacked it into a parking garage and did some good front end damage on that van that had to be repaired. That's a little bit less likely to happen in the Ducato because it's only about 8.4 feet off the ground. It's a little too early to tell, but we do not expect this 3-passenger arrangement to survive the Americanization of the Fiat Ducato. Again, we should know a little bit more as we get closer to the on-sale date of the new ProMaster. Over here in the Ducato, we get a standard Fiat radio. Again, this interior is going to be nothing like the new ProMaster, so don't really pay too much attention here. We will, of course, get an airbag for the American market. Supposedly, some of these nifty cargo storage areas may survive the transition. We'll also get a few cup holders. The overall profile of the vehicle, however, and these windows is likely to remain the same. Well, Chrysler has said that certain things are likely to change, like we're going to get a different instrument cluster, and we're also going to get those new Uconnect radio modules. Certain things like this telescoping but not tilting steering wheel are likely to remain. The driver's seat is a manual seat, but it does have height adjustability with these 2 levers here. That's rear of the seat up and down. This is the front of the seat up and down. This is our parking brake over here. We have a recline knob and a lumbar support knob. There's something else to consider, and that's the distance between these rear wheel wells. We have a standard American pallet in here with about 3,000 pounds on it. Well, that does sound like a lot for a van. Chrysler is telling us that the Americanized version of the Fiat Ducato will actually be able to carry about 2,000 pounds more in its highest configuration. So just about 5,000 pounds of payload capacity. But you'll notice that between these rear wheel wells, we have an awful lot of room. There's actually more room in this rear cargo compartment than there is in the competing GM full-size van. That's thanks to that high roof, thanks to the low floor, but also thanks to a very wide body. As I said, the Fiat Ducato does not use an automatic transmission. It also does not use a dual clutch transmission, so it's not going to drive like a Volkswagen or even a Fiat product that has one of those fancy new dual clutch transmissions. Instead, this drives more like someone driving a manual transmission fairly well. The shifts are fairly slow compared to a dual clutch transmission or even a regular automatic transmission, but they're very firm, very definite, just like a regular old manual transmission would feel. It feels like someone is driving along and you're in first gear, and then you're in neutral, and then now you're in second gear. That's what the shift quality is like. Not really a problem per se in a commercial vehicle. In fact, the reason that Fiat does this is because manual transmissions are much more reliable than automatics. There's a lot less to go wrong. There's no torque converter, so it's a lot more efficient than a regular automatic as well. And in general, clutch lifetime is huge when the car is doing the shifting for you, because the car knows exactly how to slip the clutch and when to slip the clutch, but most importantly, when not to slip the clutch. So your clutch lifetime in this type of vehicle is expected to be a great deal longer than it would be in a traditional manual transmission. It's unlikely to need to get replaced for at least 100 and something thousand miles, even under heavy loads. And even when it does need to get replaced, it should be fairly inexpensive because it's a regular old single clutch unit. We're on a fairly slight hill, but we do have 3,100 pounds in the rear. Now, no Fiat Ducato is going to win any stoplight races, not with a 3-liter turbo diesel under the hood, but we'll floor it to see how this really does. You can see takeoff from a stop in first gear is fairly leisurely because it does have to slip the clutch just a bit to help get us up the hill. I think that on very steep hills this could be a little bit of a problem. It might be an area where the V6 might have a slight advantage thanks to its traditional automatic transmission. Again, we won't really know until that ProMaster comes to the US. Now we're going to get on the freeway here and see exactly how that is. Hopefully that truck next to me is going to go faster than that because it will take me a while to get on the freeway. He probably doesn't know that we are floored. We've now hit about 70 kilometers an hour. Now we're at 80. And since I'm really bad at kilometers to miles per hour transitions or translations, I'll just have to post a little banner at the bottom to tell you what that's like. We finally hit 100 kilometers an hour, which is around 62 miles an hour or so. And now we're at 110 kilometers an hour, which is about the speed limit on this roadway. On the flip side, that diesel engine is going to get you much better fuel economy than that V6 gasoline engine would, and that's really something that's been missing in this commercial vehicle segment for a long time in America, is decent fuel economy. If you look at the American competition, we have a host of V8 engines that are very large. Some of them have 4-speed automatics, some of them have 6-speed automatics if you buy a General Motors van, but the V6 options typically only have that old 4-speed automatic. If you look at even the new Nissan NV van, it really didn't have fuel economy in mind because it has Nissan's fairly thirsty V6 engine as well as their very thirsty 5.7-liter V8, and they're both mated to a fairly old 5-speed automatic, which is not Nissan's latest transmission. Ride quality in the Ducato is unexpectedly pleasant. It's definitely better than a GM full-size van when it's empty, and even though we have 3,100 pounds in the rear, it's really a fairly nice ride out here on the road. The Ducato also drives in a more car-like manner than most full-size vans, which are based on truck chassis, and they have a definite truck-like feeling. Turning circles also fairly advantageous in this vehicle. The longest Fiat Ducato has about a 40-foot turning radius, which is a decent amount smaller than those extended GM cargo vans. Climbing up Highway 17 right now, which is a moderate mountain incline in the Bay Area, and it's obvious that the diesel has a lot of low-end torque because this vehicle feels a great deal snappier than your average gasoline vehicle with a 3,000-pound load in the back. In fact, my own SUV, which is a GMT 360 SUV from General Motors, 275 horsepower, 275 pound-feet of torque, with a similar load and a trailer attached to it. It's roughly about the same amount of weight, for the engine to be pulling. Does a decent amount worse on this highway than this Fiat Ducato does. That being said, there are some expectations you're going to need to adjust because the Fiat Ducato is not going to behave like a General Motors 6.6-liter twin-turbo V8 turbo diesel monster, of course, on the road, but it is entirely acceptable, and it's entirely acceptable for your average load. But the real benefit is that we just stopped by to fill up this vehicle with diesel fuel, and we averaged about 20 miles per gallon in mixed driving so far. We haven't had this Ducato for very long this week. It's only been about 100 miles or so, but still 20 miles per gallon average in our mixed driving test is very good. Also means that we've been averaging above 20 miles per gallon on the highway, even though we're at American highway speeds of 65 to 70 miles an hour in this vehicle. In fact, by my estimates on the highway, we've been getting about 25 to 26 miles per gallon, even though we have that 3,000-pound load in the back. That is, of course, on level driving. Now that we're climbing this mountain, our average is dropping really quite rapidly, but I still expect us to average about 15 or 20 miles per gallon on this round trip up this hill, and that's much better than you'd find in any gasoline van in America right now. I was a little bit concerned with how a European van with a 3-liter turbo diesel under the hood would handle American roads, American speeds, and American loads in the back, but this Fiat Ducato has really surprised me. It not only feels very planted on the road, even with this load in the back, which is more than I can say about certain American cargo vans. That's thanks to that load being, more than 6 inches closer to the ground. That really helps an awful lot in making the vehicle feel very planted on these winding mountain roads. But this 3-liter turbo diesel has an awful lot of torque. It really makes it a great partner climbing these hills. This is definitely better in terms of acceleration with this kind of weight in the back than a wide number of gasoline vehicles that I could mention. Definitely better than my own personal vehicle, which is a GMT 360 series SUV from General Motors with the inline-6 engine, 275 horsepower, about 275 pound-feet of torque. And when towing a trailer with this kind of weight in the back, the total vehicle weight, trailer and vehicle, is about the same as we're pulling right now. Definitely does not feel as responsive on these hills as this Fiat Ducato. Of course, right now we're going 80 kilometers an hour, and if my math works out right, that's around 50 miles an hour or so. We're not really accelerating a whole lot on this hill, but we're not slowing down either, and that's important. Thanks for watching, everyone. Again, I'm Alex Dykes, and this has been our quick look at the 2013 Fiat Ducato cargo van. Be sure and click that subscribe banner at the bottom of your screen so you can be notified when we get our hands on the all-new 2014 RAM ProMaster cargo van later this year. Go ahead and comment on this video. Tell us what you liked, what you didn't like, what you'd like to see us do in the future. You can send us messages here on YouTube and tell us what you'd like to see us review, and we'll see you next time.